Excellent. All right, so welcome to another workshop for the CRC OER Award program. This workshop is for the WAVE Web Accessibility Checker to help you learn how to check your web content for accessibility. So I'm going to start sharing my screen so that we can view some of the resources that I've put together for you today. If you are watching this video in a recording, you can access this slide deck using this tiny URL. And if you are with me, I will take a moment to grab the share link and pop that in the chat. Coming your way. All right, there we go. Okay. So the objectives for today's workshop is to learn how to add an accessibility checker extension to your web browser. It's called the WAVE Web Accessibility Checker, or WAVE Web Evaluation Tool, technically. And then we'll learn how to use WAVE to check the accessibility of web pages. And since the purpose of this workshop series is to help you with OER, it will allow you to kind of pre-screen some of the OER that you are looking for, looking to use in your classes to identify if they are sufficiently accessible to use as is, or to identify accessibility issues that may need to be remediated by our remediation team. So does your OER content need to be accessible? Yep, it does. I could go through the actual laws associated with accessibility and electronic content, but we're not going to go there today. We're going to focus mainly on the point that accessibility is an important component of equity and inclusion. The more accessible your content is, the easier it is for all your students to access that content. They don't need to request accommodations. They don't need to ask you for an alternative format because you've already anticipated their needs by providing accessible content. So what qualifies as accessible? We're looking for content that's going to be used by students with a variety of abilities, and that includes students using screen readers. And when we think about electronic content, screen readers are often sort of the first go-to as far as whether the content is accessible. A screen reader is an electronic application that is either installed on the hard drive of the computer or installed in the browser of the computer. There are a number of free versions available, and relatively soon we will have one available called Kurzweil that is on the Los Rios single sign-on page. And what these screen readers do is they read the HTML code, if you will, that is in behind the website. They, depending on the screen reader that you're using, they can also read Word documents and PowerPoints and PDFs, provided that they have appropriate formatting. And so that first bullet that you see there is structured formatting. So one of the main things that we look for in terms of accessibility is how is the document formatted? Does it have formatting that facilitates reading? And when we think about formatting and reading, we often think of like chapter and section titles. Maybe there's like some bold font that helps call out certain things, links and lists and tables, and that kind of formatting makes it easier for us with, who are using visual cues to navigate through a document. But if they're appropriately formatted on the back end, then they can also make it easier for a screen reader to read those aloud to a user who is accessing it that way. We also want to make sure that our videos are accurately captioned. And although this workshop is not about videos and captioning, I did want to make sure that I included that there. So whenever you're screening videos that you might be interested in using in your course, either through the CRC library, like Films on Demand or Canopy, or also through YouTube or Vimeo, you want to make sure that those videos are accurately captioned. If you're using like TED videos, most of the main TED Talks are already accurately captioned, and they even have interactive transcripts in multiple languages, which is really, really cool. Some of the TEDx talks that you'll find on YouTube are not accurately captioned. So you definitely don't want to just assume that a TED Talk, for example, is going to be accurately captioned. And the same goes for some of our videos on Films on Demand, unfortunately. So always make sure you check that. If you're going to be using audio recordings, you'll want to make sure that they have transcripts. Now, if we're talking about a podcast, transcript is quite easy. But if we're talking about instrumental music, that could be more of a challenge. And so transcripts may not necessarily be appropriate in that case. So we do have some existing accessibility support that I want to let you know about. I'm going to copy these links into the chat for those of you who are here right now. The first one is a link to our captioning service. And right now, until April, hopefully a little bit longer than that, but we're using some of the emergency federal funding to pay for captioning for videos. So if you have lectures that you recorded this semester or even last semester, the year before, that you plan on using going forward in future semesters, our captioning service will caption those videos for you. We also have a new remediation project, which is basically a private contractor. For the most part, we also have some in-house folks who will be remediating documents for accessibility. So if you find or if you have open content that you have created or you've located that is not accessible, like Word documents, PDFs, PowerPoints, you can submit them using this link and get them remediated for you, which is huge because, man, sometimes remediating documents can be a real hassle. And in fact, I am going to be offering workshops later on this semester about remediated Word documents, remediated PowerPoint documents. I'm not going to cover PDFs because just don't even go there. Okay. Do you have any questions about the captioning or remediation services before I move on? No head shaking. Okay, awesome. That's great. All righty. So we have already done some checking in advance to identify accessible zero textbook cost options. These may not necessarily be open. You may not necessarily be able to edit them, but they are free. So if you're looking for a textbook that's kind of a plug and play free textbook, then I would suggest looking at these places first. While not 100% accessible, they are really on their way there. So we've got LibreTexts, OpenStax, and many OpenStax textbooks are also in LibreText. And I'm partial to LibreText over OpenStax because it's easier for students to navigate. And it's a little bit more accessible as far as the accessibility options they have built in for screen reader users and those with other learning or visual challenges. We also have Lumen Learning, and sometimes there's Lumen stuff in LibreText. They incorporate a lot of OpenStax, but some other things as well. I like Lumen Learning because they usually have interactive quiz questions embedded within the content. And sometimes those Lumen Learning books are converted into Pressbooks, which is another one. So anyway, if you're looking for a textbook that you haven't already located, one that you want to use, try looking at some of these repositories first before you go launching out onto the web looking for OER for your course. Now, it is possible that everything you want doesn't exist in these existing resources, and that is where we will be going today. Okay. So the way that I checked those resources on the previous slide, and the way that I check web resources for any of the courses that are going through the fast track review process, which involves a complete accessibility review and overhaul of the course, I always try to use WAVE. And WAVE is a web accessibility evaluation tool that will run through, let me just copy the link here for you, put it in the chat. And those of you who are accessing this presentation later, once again, you can just click on the link in the slideshow and they'll take you right there. So WAVE is really nice because it is a browser extension. So as long as you have permissions to install extensions on your web browser, then you will be able to use this tool. It's free. You don't have to buy it, and you don't have to install it on your hard drive. And if you don't like it, you can take it off your browser and then reinstall it the next time you need it, if you have privacy concerns about that. The browsers that it currently works with are Chrome, Firefox, and Edge. Today, I will be demonstrating how to use it on Chrome. Okay. Oops. So what WAVE does is it scans the web page. Basically, it looks at the underlying HTML code of the web page and identifies the page structure and elements of the page, like videos and images and tables and that kind of thing. And then it'll flag any accessibility issues that it identifies in the HTML code. You don't have to worry about the HTML code. It does it for you. Don't even have to bother with that. All of the accessibility issues that it flags are going to be based right now, I believe they're based on Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0. I've included the link in this if you really want to take a deep dive into all of the web content accessibility guidelines. But again, you don't really need to take a deep dive into that stuff in order to use WAVE, the Web Accessibility Checker tool, easily. The nice part about WAVE is that it is also being used in Canvas now. So in Canvas, there is something called the Pope Tech Accessibility Guide. And I can show you where that lives if you're interested when we're done with this demonstration here. And it is powered by the WAVE tool. So when you use the accessibility guide on your Canvas pages, you're getting the same power that you would with the Chrome extension, but you don't actually have to use the Chrome extension in Canvas. The Pope Tech Accessibility Guide works best in Canvas, but outside of Canvas, you'll want to use WAVE. Okay, so what WAVE will do is it will scan websites. So anything that has a URL, it will scan. What it will not scan are documents like PDF and Word documents, slide decks, PowerPoints, Google Slides, that kind of thing, videos and audio recordings. So if your OER that you are using, that is a web page, includes links to documents, those will need to be evaluated for accessibility separately. Right? So the WAVE cannot scan those documents that are embedded on the web page or that are linked to from the web page. So that's one downer about it, but not everything is all powerful. And when it comes to accessibility, redundancy and checking is always something that we have to do. Okay, so now let's do a little bit of a demo. First, I want to just show you the Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool website, okay? They have a nice video showing you how to view it. So if you wanna watch this again later, you can. There is a link at the very top of the page for the browser extensions. And you can then select which browser you are using. And it will take you right to that browser on their web store or their add-on store, and then you can install the extension there. When you install WAVE, you will see this little gray W appear at the top of your browser. So hopefully you all can see my tabs and my web link here, and right at the top, there is a little W. Okay, so I see you leaning in. Does that mean this is really small for you?
No, I can see just fine.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I did lean in, but it's totally acceptable. I can see it.
Okay, cool. I forget often that I am using the my large high resolution screen, and often that ends up shrinking everything down so it's super tiny when I share my screen. So apologies for that. Let me see if I think we actually, for this purposes, we don't actually need it to be larger. Okay. So on my demo, I actually have a number of websites that I wanted to start with. The first one that I'm going to do is a website that I found myself for biology. And there's this guy, and it's like science music videos, and he has all these like really fun videos where he sings songs to help students learn the parts of the body or the parts of the cell or metabolic processes. And it's really catchy and a lot of students love it. And I discovered that as a result of the pandemic, he has put together entire courses to help high school and college students prepare for biology classes. And so I thought, okay, well, let me check this out because his videos are really entertaining. Maybe I can use this for my course. And so on this website, we see that there's a video here. There are lots of images. There are some lists. We've got is something that looks kind of like headings, maybe. Anyway, looking at this page without running the accessibility checker, it actually looks like it could be okay because there's some structure. There are headings. The links have appropriate names, and there are images, and they have descriptions, what have you. Okay, so now let's run the web accessibility checker, the WAVE tool, and find out what it says. So I'm going to go up to my browser where I have all my extensions, and I'm going to click on the WAVE button. Alternatively, I could right click and then select WAVE this page from my right click menu. So I'm going to push on the extension, and what it's going to do is it's going to scan the page, and it's going to give me a panel appears on the left-hand side, and that panel identifies a summary of accessibility errors, contrast errors, alerts, features, structural elements, what have you. So the structural elements and the features, that talks about like, you know, what do you have actually on the page, right? Is there text? Are there images? Are there videos? ARIA, or like interactive, like search features, that kind of stuff. So 52 errors is kind of alarming. It's not the worst I've seen, but it's definitely like there are some errors there, and 56 alerts. So let's take a look at what those actually mean. So I'm going to select the details tab, and the details tab shows me that I've got some issues. You'll notice that each of these is actually interactive. I can select it and it will take me to the part of the page where the issue is located. But what's most important here is that it's telling me that this has 10 images that are missing alternative text. Alternative text is a description of the image so that an individual who is reading this with a screen reader and not looking at it will know what is in the image. That's important. This is by not having alternative text, we have excluded users from accessing the content on this page. So that's a big issue. We also have a whole lot of contrast errors, and contrast errors can be an issue for low vision students. And especially if they're sometimes they're using accessibility tools within the browser that increase contrast, and even these low contrast items will not be helped. So this caption here below the image is hard to read, right? It is a light gray and it's italics. It's hard to see. What really stinks about this is that this image doesn't have alt text. The alt text is null, which means that they've marked this as a decorative image and then included the description of the image immediately below it in almost invisible ink. So, you know, while an apple may not necessarily be key to understanding what this is, we've got this a really important family tree here of plants, and it has no alt text, and then its caption is also illegible for some students. So there are some problems with this page. So what can you do, right? Well, probably not use the page would be your first option. This particular stuff is not, it's free. It is ZTC, right? Zero cost, but it is not open. So I can't actually take this stuff and put it in my Canvas page and make it accessible. So that's one of the issues with when we link to third-party websites that are copyrighted. You know, well, this doesn't actually, I don't think this one has the info, but I've asked this guy if I can use the stuff, and he said, no, you have to use it on my website. Otherwise it's free. And so in that case, I can't remediate this. So unless I reach out to him to fix it, I probably shouldn't be using it as a required resource in my class. Okay, so Wave can be really helpful because it saves us from wasting our time from developing a lesson plan around web content that is not going to be accessible to all of our students. And so that is what this demo, this particular page was selected for. Was I could have developed a whole activity around this page, including encouraging the students to access the flashcards or to take the interactive quiz and report their results. But because I used Wave, I knew that this page was actually not going to be a suitable resource, and I won't bother developing a lesson plan around it. Okay. So let's go to another page now, and we'll try this again. This one is a Pressbook. I love Pressbooks. I love the way they look. They're very polished. You can't integrate them into Canvas the way you can with an OpenStax or a LibreText, but I find them, there's something about the simplicity of the way the pages look that just really draws me in. So this particular Pressbook was produced by Open Oregon, which is a collaborative effort of Oregon Institutes of Higher Ed to develop open resources, and all of their open textbooks are posted on Pressbooks. So if you like this, you can get a Pressbooks, a free Pressbooks account to share it with your students, or if you want to actually remix and incorporate multiple Pressbooks, I think it's $100 for the instructor for the year for a single textbook. I talked to Andy about exploring Pressbooks for our institution as a whole, and whoo-wee, man, pricey, very pricey. Okay, so let's run Wave on here. So I'm going to select the Wave option, and ooh, now this is looking good. All right, so we've got no errors and 3 alerts. We've got some contrast errors though. So let's see what our contrast errors are. Okay, so once again, we have the what am I trying to say? The caption for the video or for the image is low contrast. However, the image has an alt text. They don't align, which is kind of weird, but at least the image has an alt text. So there is some information about this image beyond what is in the low contrast stuff. So it's not great, but it could be a lot worse. The alerts are associated with long alternative text. And what this tells us is that alt text, a screen reader will only read alt text up to like 150 characters, I think. So it's like a tweet, basically. If it's longer than a tweet, then the screen reader will stop. And anything after that is not going to be read by the screen reader, no matter whether the student wants to do it or not. It's just not going to go any further. So we want to keep our alt text short. And in this case, there are 2 images that have really long alt text. Again, we can't do anything about that. But what we can do is we can look at the other information around the image to see if maybe the text gives us enough information about this picture that missing the end of it is not the end of the world. So that's one of the things that we can look for. And although there are errors to this page, I would consider this page acceptable to share with my students because we don't have any main accessibility errors, and the contrast errors are for images that have alt text for the most part. Okay, so we'll call that good. There is one other thing that I wanted to show you down here and I'm going to get out of Wave here so that we can see it thoroughly. So Lumen Learning and Pressbooks often have these interactive elements with them. They are built by a tool called H5P, and LibreTexts they are also working on developing these interactive questions as well. Now, these elements are really easy for students who are using a mouse to use, because they can drag and drop, or they can click on the buttons, but they may or may not be accessible to a student who is using a screen reader, because they're not going to be using a mouse. They're going to be using their keyboard to navigate. These, I checked them, and they are navigable using the keyboard. And you'll notice that when I push the tab, let me start this over. When I push the tab button, it highlights this. And then if I click return, it's going to move it up to here, and I can decide where I want it to end up. And then I can click return, and it places it there. And I didn't use my mouse at all to move that. So that means that this interactive element is keyboard navigable and is therefore accessible to students using a screen reader, which is really great, because students who are using a screen reader, they have just as much right to access these practice assessments as all the other users. And so this is a really wonderful feature that we see in Lumen and in Pressbooks. And I have to tell you, if you're using publisher content and you really like this kind of thing, and you're sticking with Pearson or McGraw-Hill or something, did I say that out loud? Anyway, strike that. If you're sticking with publisher content because you love their interactive elements, it is possible that those are not accessible. That was one of my chief complaints, and reason I switched from a publisher tool to free content, to OpenStax specifically, was because the interactive elements that I so valued were not accessible to my students, some of my students, and that was a problem for me. I didn't think it was fair to give them an alternative assignment. They should be able to do what the rest of the class is doing. Okay, stepping down off my little podium here. Okay, so I have, let's see, I'm gonna put this particular one in the chat, and I'm just going to also show you guys, I'm not gonna actually run the text, but I wanted to share Project Gutenberg with you. It was not on my list at the beginning, but it is a really fabulous resource, because the content and Project Gutenberg can be downloaded in multiple forms. Let's see. Oh, actually, I think, what was I going? I've lost my back button here. So let's look at this one. So I clicked on this particular book and look at the options that it's provided. It has provided an HTML version, an EPUB with and without images, a Kindle version, and a plain text version. EPUBs are fabulous for screen readers, as are HTML files. They're way better than like a Google Doc or something like that. So this is really wonderful, because students can access this in a variety of ways. And Project Gutenberg has a tremendous collection of things that are in or out of print, things that you might access from the library, from our library, but from our library, there's only an inaccessible PDF version or a Kindle version or something. So definitely want to take a look at Project Gutenberg if you can, if you are in a discipline that would use content on there. Okay. And so the last part of the demo that I wanted to do was actually a request, right? So we had a request for one of the LibreText textbooks. And so we are here. This is the fundamentals of public speaking. This is the home page, and each of these are chapters in the book. Now you'll notice a couple of features right off the bat here. There is a red button that says PDF, and you can download the full book. This is fabulous for a student who wants to print out the entire book. The PDF that LibreText generates automatically is not accessible unless it has been remediated. And so just don't assume that the PDF is going to be accessible. So I wouldn't link that PDF in your course. You can tell students available as a print version from LibreText, but I wouldn't post it in your class. Okay, there is another feature here, and you can see there's a whole tray over on the side, so we can open up the contents, and then students can navigate down here. I'm using my tab button right now to navigate through, and that will open. If I click return, it's going to open. Should not opening it. Interesting. Okay. It should tab through, and then you should be able to open the chapter using this tool. It also has some readability options. The Beeline reader is a really wonderful reader. If students are low vision, or if they have a learning challenge that color helps with focusing. So it's really great. They've got this actually like embedded in the course. So let's go into one of the pages of the class, and we'll go to benefits of public speaking. Okay. And so if I open up the readability pane, I can invert this into dark mode, which for me, man, I love dark mode. I live in dark mode. I wish Canvas had dark mode. It's so much easier on the eyes, but there are other options as well. Depending on a student's vision, there are ways to kind of highlight and notice that it's gradual into that bright color and then eases back out. You can also change the text size. So if you've ever had a student that needs enlarged font, this is an easy way they can do it themselves. You can change the margin size. You can set default settings for a student. They can immediately, it'll already be the way they want it when they get there, and that'll be their default settings from there on. So that's pretty nice. Let me turn those off. Okay, so let's run Wave on this page and see how we do. Okay. So we have one error. We've got some contrast errors, which are intrinsic to LibreText, unfortunately. But what we have is we have a really nicely structured page. It has headings that can be used to navigate through the page with a screen reader with a keyboard. This particular page does not have an image on it, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's see where these low contrast errors are. Oh, it's on the menu. That's completely out of our control. We can't really change that, unfortunately. Let's see if we can find a page that has an image on it so that we can see how the alt text is. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we'll wave this page and let's see what we've got. So we have one error. There's an empty link up at the top. Oh, it's a link for the Creative Commons license. That's interesting. Oh, well. Okay, so now we have this image here. And it says suspicious. We'll notice down here, there are suspicious alternative text. Oh, look at that. Okay, so I'm not sure if you guys can see this highlighted in green here, but what this is the alt text that has been assigned to this particular image. And it says clipboard _ E71FFE, a whole bunch of numbers .png. So when we upload an image to a page in Canvas or into LibreText or even into Word, the default alternative text becomes the image name, like the file name with the file extension. Clearly, that alt text does not capture what is in this image, right? So this particular, it looks like whoever created this document did not actually add alt text to the images in the book. So I would suggest, Dan, that you create your own content, your own version of this, and using the LibreText editor, you can add your own alt text to this to make it accessible. Alternatively, you could contact LibreText or the original author and ask them to add alt text to it. And most folks that post this stuff on LibreText, they're very open to suggestions, and the author is usually listed. So it's, it might be worth your time to reach out to them before you start doing it yourself. Other than that, this particular page looks pretty good. Okay, I'm guessing that alt text issue is going to be repeated throughout the course. Yeah. Okay. I think I am almost done with this demonstration. Well, actually, this presentation. So let me just blast through the last page, and then we'll end this recording. Okay, so what we learned this time is that you have the ability to use Wave, the web evaluation tool, on websites that you might be wanting to use for your ZTC textbook. If those are OER, and you find that they are not accessible, you may be able to remediate them by putting them in your Canvas course or in LibreText, etc. If you find that there are a lot of errors on the page, maybe time to move on and try some other web resource instead. If you're interested in learning more about accessibility and creating accessible course content, I've got some links here at the end of this presentation. The Los Rios Self-Paced Accessible Course Creation Academy has everything you ever wanted to know about accessibility in a nice Canvas-based format. It is self-paced, and you can access the resources anytime you want. It will always be available. There are also self-paced courses offered by the CCC Accessibility Center, and more workshops like this through the CRC OER Award program. As I said before, upcoming workshops include how to remediate your documents yourself. Okay, I am gonna stop the recording here. Thank you, everybody.